wellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, featuring your hosts Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is the Baby Sleep Talk, which if you are in the trenches, this is for you. If perhaps you're terrified but you really kind of want another baby, this is also for you. Because that's pretty much where Bridget and I both sit.
Yeah.
So before we jump into it, I just want to remind you to jump onto nourishingthemother.com.au and on the front page, sign up to join our tribe with your email list, with your email address. And once a week, we will send you an email with everything we've put out in the world so you can choose what you'd love to click into and dive a little bit deeper with, what perhaps you'd love to listen a little bit more to. And then occasionally we'll send you another email where we're sharing some tools, tactics, tips, parenting, self-reflective moments that, a conversation that Bridget and I would have between ourselves that we think you'd be interested in too. So please jump on to nourishingthemother.com.au and sign up to join our tribe.
And today's topic was inspired in part by Julie's visit to my place today, where I got to witness the incredible, I suppose, transition.
The incredible sleeping baby.
The incredible sleeping baby in a pram with, maybe a minute of whimpering, resulting from some very, very strong sleep cues that you had developed. And I said, wow, looking at each of our mothering journeys with our children to get to that point and for Gwen to be so okay with that.
I never thought it was possible. Honestly, I thought if you had a child that fell asleep that easily, I thought you had they were a broken, a bird with a broken wing, that you had
somehow sleep trained them into oblivion.
Exactly. Yes, it's exactly what I thought. They become these little zombies or something.
Yeah.
Turns out it's not so black and white.
No, which I really love. And it's funny, I remember back in episode 100 of the podcast where I, very tearfully, Sylvie was 9 months old and I'd had enough. Yeah, and we really hashed out the whole topic of sleep.
I still so feel that. I still so feel that.
And you were pregnant with Gwen, and that was one of the big things that you were
terrified.
Yeah, of this whole thing of what the sleep thing was going to be like, and could you do it again? And so it's funny that we find ourselves here tackling it in this way, because it is part and parcel of mothering young children is the sleeplessness, and I'm still waking up at least once or twice a night, but I have really just shifted my view on it and softened into it and recognised that it's not going to be forever. Whereas there was a long time where I was like, fuck, she should be sleeping through by now. The should, right? They're projecting onto her that she should be. And
has that made it easier for you to cope?
So much easier. Because
so interesting.
Because I'm just like, okay, and the truth is now she resettles fairly quickly, although sometimes I find myself that I've fallen asleep with her, and so I'll get back and get into my own bed. But yeah, simply accepting it as a stage and not trying to make it anything bigger than what it is has helped a lot. And
which is so interesting because you can so get stuck in the physicalness of sleep deprivation. But what you're saying is the situation hasn't changed, but your level of rejuvenation has.
Yeah, and also my perspective on it's changed because it's no longer something that I'm wanting to change. It is what it is. And that may be different if it's a night where she just won't settle and is up for 2 hours, and that became a real constant thing. But for the most part, she's resettling within sort of 15, 20 minutes, and I'm either fallen asleep with her or I'm back in my bed not long after I've put her back in. And she's walking into our room. She's almost getting into our room by the time I'm awaking to her and then taking her back. But yeah, it's really, I've come to that place after several months of kind of going, your brother slept through by 15 months. Why haven't you slept through by 15 months,
Yeah. Do you ever think about bringing her into your bed?
No.
Why?
Because I don't want to.
Why?
We co-slept for 9 months, and at that point I was really ready for her to have her own sleep space. She does come in the morning at around 6 because she still has 2 feeds a day, so she feeds at 5 p.m. and she feeds at around 6 a.m. That morning feed. So sometimes she will come in maybe when it's still just becoming light, but she doesn't typically sleep that well with us. And she will, because she's got that association of the feed in our bed, I think she'd almost kind of be wanting that and be a bit agitated that she's not getting that. So no, I'm quite firm about her going back to her bed. And I think that for me, like, the consistency of that helps her. The consistency of implementing that as a kind of routine is that she kind of knows that yes, she can come into me and yes, I'll be available to her, but we will go back together to her room. And I will like lay with her if I need to, and then usually I will lay with her for a minute just because I want to still be like dozing as I'm helping her get back to sleep, because I don't want to have to wake up fully really if I can avoid it. And that's what's great about, she's got a floor bed, that's what's great about that, because there's room for me on there, and if I incidentally fall asleep with her I can, and I can still have a good sleep in that process. So
would that be different to how you were with your first?
In terms of, I think with my first, I would have been very much the protective kind of, yes, you come in, you obviously need this, and maybe not honouring the need for my boundaries as much. Whereas I really recognise the service to her and to myself of us each having our sleep spaces, you know? But that also, if she is distressed or if she is needing more of me, I can give that to her by way of being able to lay with her if she needs it. And also if I can't be bothered staying awake and really trying to be present, I can instead lay asleep and cuddle, and that can be the presence that she gets. Yeah, so that was kind of long-winded.
No, it's so interesting though, isn't it? Because I can see so much of myself in each of the stories that you tell, and I think, yeah, I so would have judged you and me back then, you know, that you weren't meeting your child's needs, that they needed more. So, you know, your needs kind of got, you know, shoved in the bin and the lid closed because it was their needs that you were meeting, and that was your responsibility. And, you know, the whole sleeping in their own space, taking them back to their room, how mean, you know, they clearly need you, they're scared on their own.
And I recognise and I really recognise that would have been where I was at one point with my first. And like I remember trying, you know, to like, I wouldn't even call it sleep training, I would just call it giving him an opportunity to try and fall asleep on his own, you know, and trying to do like even what like Pinky McKay's book said around like, you know, giving them a bit of time on their own. And I couldn't even do it. Like I viscerally had this horrible feeling of doing that. Like I just felt like I was abandoning him, you know, and I think it was because I'd read so much on how, you know, in inverted commas bad it was.
Yeah, me too.
That I just couldn't even fathom it. It was really only till, I mean, aware parenting kind of saved our sleep, you know, in terms
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, because then that's how I night weaned him, and that's how I eventually got him to go to sleep on his own. Like, you know, at 3, I was able to say, you know, give him a cuddle, book, good night, close it, you know, pull the door shut.
What do you think about that book, Save Our Sleep? Because I know your chiropractor recommends it.
Does he?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
No, I don't think that she is particularly respectful. And no.
It seems to be the go-to book.
I can see how people like it because it seems to be all about creating a routine, and I do think that babies do, and children. I mean, all of us, like our brains, are sort of wired to search for kind of habits and routines, and we do on some level thrive. But I don't know that it respects a child's individual agency and whole person in trying to say that they should be fitting some kind of rigid schedule. In essence. And I mean, some of our language, I don't think it's particularly respectful. It doesn't come from a place of, I don't know, seeing the baby as more than something to be managed, maybe. But, you know, who knows? This is my perspective of having looked at it, you know, 4 years ago. I haven't looked at it recently, but that was what I took away from it then. But yeah, I don't know, like as Sylvie as a baby, I definitely looked a lot, and I know that you've done this too, which has created a big shift.
You really paved that way for me, honestly. I don't think I'd be quite so aware of it going into it had I not had so many conversations with you around it, and had I not really delved more deeply into more brain development and into more, you know, RIE styles of
Yeah.
parenting. I don't think I'd be quite where I was had I not heard all of that from you.
Well, I suppose like, if we look at it, it's a lot of attachment stuff. Absolutely, you and I both believe a lot in developing secure attachment.
Yeah.
But some of the literature, I think, or the books on attachment parenting can also be masking a parent's own woundedness around their perceived lack of attachment, which I don't think a lot of mothers give bring awareness to that, and how that is therefore influencing the dynamic that they're then projecting onto their child, and what's manifesting in the child's clinginess or our belief that they need us.
Yeah.
And so, like, I remember reading, like, Your Self-Confident Baby, like Magda Gerber's book, which is the RIE book we're talking about. You know, and I bought that book when Hugo was a baby, and there was parts of that I just couldn't face, you know, then around the benefits to them of independent sleep and all of that. But with Sylvie, and knowing that I really wanted to see that as a nurturing thing for her to really be able to achieve on her own, that kind of sleep, I really had to reframe a lot of my beliefs around that being, you know, abandoning her, or that she deeply needed my body closeness, and all of those kinds of things, or that she needed me to settle her as opposed to her have an opportunity to find that for herself. And this is something that you and I chatted about today, wasn't it? That you still find yourself having to reparent yourself.
I said to you, it still shocks me, and I still, every time I put her to sleep, have like these flashback moments, almost like, you know, through each of my kids at this same age, going, wow, I'm still having, when you say parenting myself, because with my daughter at the moment, I was saying to Bridge, I'm in two minds about, you know, videoing it, because I don't want it to be like any sort of parenting guru, but more just, I find this incredibly fascinating, is that she can be totally awake, fine, comfortable, not even crying in my arms, but I know she's getting tired. And so I can put her sleeping bag on, say there's sleep Q1, went from a wrap to a sleeping bag, and put it on her, I call it the whooshy machine, but it's just a white noise machine, and we play waves on it. And as soon as I lay her in my arms, instantly she'll start crying. But because I'm programmed with aware parenting, I expect tears before bed. I expect that that's part of our bedtime routine, and that's part of the wind down. And so I kind of, with, you know, definitely my second and third child, listened to lots of tears before there was sleep. Lots. You know, going to bed would be a 20-minute process of, you know, listening to tears. But she will kind of cry-ish, not necessarily that much, before she's ready for me to put her in the cot. And I know she's ready because she starts kind of almost rubbing her nose against my breast or my arm, and she's just looking for, she has like this snuggly blanket thing. And as soon as I put her in her cot, she rolls on her side, grabs the blanket, and kind of does this, you know, like sort of sucky, sort of licky thing on it, and totally just goes to sleep on her own. Now, she's awake 100% of the time I put her in the cot. She's never asleep when I put her in there. But before I put her in there, I find myself facing myself every time, because I still feel this rising anxiety that I think is still there from my first, of the second I put her in here, she's going to wake up and scream, and I'm going to be here forever. Which is, it almost feels like post-traumatic stress from my first.
It's so interesting that you say that, because just as you are saying these words, I was immediately transported back to my son, like back to Hugo being, you know, a couple of weeks old, and that it seriously was like PTSD. You know, like, or like massive anxiety.
Yes.
And I can feel that in my body.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. So every single time I go to, and I know that's where she wants, because I've tried resisting that and just holding her in my arms, thinking, surely you'll just fall asleep in my arms and it'll be lovely and I can feel much better about that.
Yeah.
And she doesn't bloody go to sleep. So I know she's calling me to to step up. But every time I face that anxiety within myself from back then, and all of those memories and all of those stories when all of my kids woke up the second I did that, and all of the beliefs that said you couldn't or you shouldn't, or having a, you know, comfort blanket, which she currently has now, is a control pattern
or
and a broken child
repression mechanism.
Yes, because that should be you, not the blanket. You know, I face all of these like stacked beliefs. I find catapulting me at this one moment every single time before I put my child to bed. And so I've started doing, right before, as I put her in my arms and she starts crying, I've started moving my hips with her in my arms in a infinity symbol, a figure 8. And I don't know why, it was just a very intuitive kind of feeling, and I visualize in my head. So I take myself out of that anxiety by visualizing the body sensations of the infinity symbol within her body, and then I replicate that energy movement as if I'm seeing it in like a color kind of circuit track, figure 8 track in her body. And it almost feels to me like in this I'm bringing all of her energetic lines back in online.
Beautiful.
And so if I give myself that presence, it's almost like I can parent myself enough that I do enough infinity figure 8s with my hips and with my body, and in my mind visualize the energy in her body, to say you need to be congruent before you put her down on that mattress. You need to be, she's safe, she's going to sleep, not riddled with anxiety from the past, because I'm just living in the past or I'm living in the present. Anxiety is not a true measure of where you are right now. And I find that just the mindfulness practice and visualization practice of the figure 8, even if it's just for, you know, 10 seconds, sometimes that's all I need. Sometimes I'll need to do it for a minute, maybe 2. Sometimes I'll need to do it for 10 seconds. I'm like, nah, I'm good. And as long as I get to myself, to that space of congruence, she's going to be fine when I put her down here.
It's amazing how much it's such an example of how much we are being called into our own alignment so that they can have that freedom.
Suit.
You know, have the freedom to do what they need to do, which is in this case go to sleep.
Right. And I still, and you and I said today, and so is that even aware parenting? And we were having this conversation. I said, I have this conversation in my own head all the time because I, in inverted commas, have grown up with such entrenched beliefs that morphed beyond attachment, where it was my responsibility and my job, morphed beyond that, broke all of that apart to realise that was just me needing to comfort me not wanting to be alone, me feeling like my parents should have stayed with me when I needed them, me perceiving they need me when the reality is they didn't. I needed me, and I needed to heal those old wounds. So, you know, moving beyond that into aware parenting really allowed me the space to go, no, you know, it's okay to have this boundary, but it's also okay to feel held in that. There's a difference from wanting to comfort and stop to wanting to comfort and hold space. There's a real difference there. Yeah. And here I find myself not really listening to tears because they're not really there. And she just magically, and I say magically because it's still, every time I still go, that's amazing. Just magically goes to sleep.
It was pretty awesome to witness.
She's like a dream. Nick and I still, and the beauty is it can be anyone, not just me. Anyone can put her to bed like that. Anyone. My husband does it. And every time he or I walk out, I'm like, she's amazing. And my husband's like, I know. This is like ridiculous. And I still shake my head in disbelief going, how is this even possible? Yeah. Because I was sure they had to be, in inverted commas, broken children to sleep like that.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? And then how much of that is simply because we are looking for evidence of that? Like I think about the whole, you know, needing to release tears or needing to release or certain behaviours is indicative of, or certain, you know, milestones of the day as, you know, opportunities for release. But if that's what we're constantly filtering out perceptions to try and see, are we almost making like a mountain out of a molehill or trying to see something that's not even there? You know what I mean? I don't know. And as you and I were having the conversation today, what is aware parenting? Because, you know, when we talk about aware parenting, we're talking about largely the work of Aletha Salter, who is she studied under Jean Piaget, so a Swiss psychologist with a really strong interest and great wisdom in child development. And she comes from this background of attachment parenting, but looking at also the need to release tears and laughter, and that emotion should be moved through the body and not something to be stifled, which sometimes attachment parenting practices can kind of do. So she was all about the expression and creating space for expression. And her practice with her children and what she recommends in The Aware Baby, which is her kind of signature sort of book, is that for each sleep you hold the baby in your arms and allow them to cry for as long as they need to before their bodies kind of soften and go quiet and go to sleep in your arms. And when they're fast asleep, you then lay them down. And that was always her sort of approach with sleep. And so, but then, we were talking about this, yes, but is that not her own unconscious or conscious childhood void of attachment that she's then saying needs to be done because that's the most aware way? Or is an aware way recognizing what is your own stuff and trying to separate that from what the child in front of you is needing, which clearly Gwen is quite happy to be put down, awake and go to sleep.
Yeah, and I still feel guilt about it. What is that? Like, I still carry guilt about it because she really genuinely is, that is her best way to go to sleep.
Yeah.
But I still feel really uncomfortable about it. What is that?
It could be a couple of things. It could be the entrenched beliefs that you have that have told you that the best way is to hold and to be touching.
That you're only connected when you're physically connected.
That you're only connected. And that would be also aligning a lot with your values around physical touch and the healing nature of touch. Or it could be something unconscious for you that says that that's not safe. That the safest way or the most held way is to hold, But it's really interesting, isn't it? It's just again, that mirror of, gosh, like, how much is them and how much is me, and that's such a thin veil, the line between ourselves and our children and what they offer us all the time as a mirror to grow through.
We know it's easy to lose yourself in motherhood.
To be tapped out and touched out, to forget who you are and what you're worthy of, to fall short of the mother you thought you should be.
Ouch.
This is why we created the Loathing to Loving program.
We want you to open up, to show up and transform what you believe is possible for you as a woman and as a mother, because you're both, and we don't want you to give up one in order to be the other.
For $249, you'll spend 5 weeks online with us with lifetime access to 4 modules where we give you the toolkit for understanding what's happening in your world and how to transform it.
You can pay in full, or we have just instigated payment plans, which means you can make 3 simple payments, one of $49 at sign up and 2 $100 payments over 2 months, if that is going to make it easier in your world.
Yes, so come and blossom with us.
Open up, show up and transform.
The sleep topic does come up quite a bit in our private Facebook group. In terms of perhaps, even toddlers having difficulty going to sleep without being fed to sleep, or in needing to be laid with for long periods of time in order to go to sleep. And any woman who's been listening to the podcast long enough, or anybody who's done our programs, that knows that's not the child, that's a dynamic. It's part of what's been a habit that's been formed, and it's also on some level a need that's being fulfilled for the mother through the child having that attachment. Which is just so interesting, and something that is often quite, kind of painful for us to kind of grow through and go, okay, well, why is my child needing this, and why am I needing it too, and what would it be okay for me? It's always both of us. It's a co-creation.
Get our needs met.
Yeah. And so, I've been interestingly doing some of this with myself and with Sylvie at bedtime, because I've noticed that I can get really triggered if she takes like longer than half an hour to go to sleep and she tosses around on the bed and basically just stuffs around, in my view. And if I do try and like explain to her, look, I'm going to go out and I give you some time, she'll just get up off the bed and walk out. That's the drawback of the floor bed, is she gets up and walks out. So I need to stay with her, and until she doesn't need that anymore, or until I don't need that anymore. But I've had to like parent myself as I'm watching this play out, and I'm watching the trigger rise within my body, like the anger that comes up sometimes, and go, why am I having such a problem with her tossing and turning? Or why am I having such a problem with her not going to sleep so quickly? Or why am I having such a problem with what is being presented right in front of me? And I recognize so often it's because I am forcing my expectations onto somebody else. I am desiring to make different what someone else is presenting to me that's someone else being my child, which is futile. Like, you know, anytime we're trying to control someone else, we're going to create negative feelings within us because we can't control another person. And the same goes with sleep. And I think that this whole sleep thing can be such a teacher for us around that, you know, and around the shoulding and the social injections around how babies should be. And I mean, that's one of the biggest farcical things in our culture is the babies should just sleep. And, you know, I remember a friend of mine who had like a sleep consultant, and you know, she sent me all of her notes of what she'd filled out, and you know, she had these like stuff, and I'm thinking these are completely unrealistic expectations you have of your baby as I was reading it, and going, but this is the culture we're in, where it says that babies, you know, should sleep X amount of hours and that they shouldn't wake up and all this kind of stuff, and I was really recognizing within my own dialogue some nights what I'm expecting of her, why I'm getting frustrated, because it's never, so rarely is it them, it's like whatever the trigger is in them that's for us to learn. And so, you know, when I was reframing this with me, I was thinking, this is, if children know exactly what they need to heal and what they need to move feelings through their body, which they do, you know, the tossing and turning that they do is also part of like getting out the last of the energy for their day. You know, the fiddling with things, or the desire to, kind of for her often is, you know, getting up and walking and playing games. It's also to engage me in whatever she needs to help her find, you know, connection, comfort, you know, because she'll continue to try and play games well beyond, you know, my limit. And I can see all of those things as little feedbacks for me to also recognize boundaries when I have overstepped my own boundaries. What are some loving limits I can put in there for her? How can I make this more okay within myself to allow her to get out what she needs to? And there's just so much for us all of the time in these sleep stories that we have with our kids, and they're nuanced depending on what's going on for us too. Like sometimes if we're stressed, we can find getting them to sleep even more difficult because we just want to get the hell out of there and go and deal with whatever the stress is in our lives. And that's why I think that the sleep thing can be so painful often, because you know, it might be the end of the day, or it might be that you're exhausted, or it might be that you've just got some other big stuff going on in your life, and this whole baby sleep thing can be all consuming if we're trying to make it any other way than what it is, which is them doing what they need to do to help themselves heal and help us heal whatever's going on for us at the same time.
There's so much that I loved in that. I loved so many of your perspective flips there. I actually love the whole idea of actually looking at their bodies and seeing what, if they're always seeking to release what's pent up within them, and they have the perfect mechanism in which to do that, then just actually observing their behaviour as opposed to being naughty, as opposed to what are they trying to achieve here.
And I mean, that's,
I really like that.
And it's so true. I mean, like particularly the flicking the legs down, or like we have a whole bunch of like games that we sort of play before bed, but when she keeps doing it, I can say, okay, she probably needs me to put a limit right here where I say we're not going to do that anymore. You know, and then she'll continue to grab her like teddies when we've already put them to bed, you know, and my husband will just kind of let her do that stuff, and I'm just like, I can see that what that needs is for me to say, no, it's bedtime now, and the firmness that sometimes that the toddlers often need to feel held. But I think sometimes when we're wanting to be maybe super conscious or meet their needs, we can sometimes not meet their needs by simply not giving them the boundaries that they're actually asking for around sleep, because they're asking for boundaries to also be put there.
I think all of the time. I think kids in general. I mean, I think you hear a lot of that from Janet Lansbury, and certainly
Magda Gerber.
Thank you. Thank you, Magda Gerber as well. And I just think I just completely resonate with that in personal experience. It's just really seeing, I guess it's another perspective flip of seeing how there's like let's take your teddies example. So you keep playing with the teddies, keep letting her play with the teddies. There's almost an insecurity on a really felt level that's a bit kind of, just keep going because we don't want it to go wrong. Just keep going because I can't handle your tears. Just keep going because I can't handle the storm that could possibly come. So I'm just going to make it okay for you to just keep going. I'm just going to people please. I'm just sure. Yes, you know.
It's so true, isn't it?
And it's like this just kind of pitter-pattering running. And I think on a deep level, our kids don't then feel safe to actually let go of what's kind of niggling in there. And so it just keeps kind of niggling. Whereas I think I really resonate with what you're saying, because I think what you're saying is when you start to see those behaviours of, you know, I want to drink, I want to get up, I want to da-da-da, of saying it's not any of the things, right? It's the underlying feelings that are just need to come out. And so in a way, you're kind of looking for, how do I pick that scab?
Yeah.
And let them know that no matter what is within them, there's no darkness or ferocity greater than me. That doesn't sound very good, but you know what I mean.
But whatever.
But I can handle it.
Yeah.
There's no darkness greater than me. There's no darkness greater than me. That's what I had going through my head as I'm saying it. Yeah. That's not what I meant. What I meant was, whatever you've got that you think is ugly or unacceptable, I can take it.
Yeah.
You know, no worries. I've got this. So I'm putting down my anchor and I'm saying, give it to me. Because this is time for it to come out, because it's no longer needed here right now.
Yeah.
And so that's what I really get for you. And
Totally.
I do that with all of my kids and throughout the day. Like, it's not even just a nighttime thing. If I see any of those niggly sort of behaviours, I'm in there, honestly, most of the time with a pretty firm boundary, because I'm looking for the release.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for the, how does everyone stay happy? I'm looking for the, give me your ferocity.
Yeah.
Because there's no part of you that needs to be ashamed here.
It's like, oh, you know, the tantrum's coming, you know, and like, you know, battening down the hatches for that to be able to release.
Yeah. Because I think on the other side of that, kids are much calmer and back to really cooperative natures.
Absolutely.
And I think that, you know, definitely then follows through in sleep. I do think, and I know I'm cringing as I say it because I would have hated me back with number 2, but I do think the breast can become a fallback mechanism. Yeah. I do think the more we feed at night, the more we feed at night. And I do think there's a way that we get to the point where the breast is, you know, an all-night supermarket because we're too exhausted and it's too hard to hold any space for anything and anyone at that point, because our boundaries are so obliterated. We've just got to get through. We're kind of in survival
You just
mode.
kind of keep going because it's almost easier to keep going than the perceived challenge of changing it.
Yeah, exactly. Until such time as happens with everybody, the pain of where you're at now becomes greater than the pain of what if comes next.
Which is totally what episode 100 is. It's like, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
You know? And it's that.
And we all get there.
Yeah.
But I do think you can consciously choose not to get there as well.
Yeah. And I mean, that's absolutely why, like, you know, particularly, like, I mean, part of, I have a really a good value on extended breastfeeding, but very much on my terms. You know, that relationship needs to be one that I'm comfortable with sustaining. And so for me to be comfortable with sustaining it, it needs to be, you know, what works for me.
Yes.
And I think that can be true with so many things. And I think that so often the relationships that we have with our kids that make the days really hard or really exhausting, or even often we want to avoid, can often be because we haven't set appropriate boundaries that are honouring what we need and also honouring what our kids need. You know, because of that desire to keep them happy, you know, which might mean that they whine half the day because what they really need is actually a strong boundary to be able to release the pain underneath the whinging. Yeah.
Whinging is a clear sign there's something else going on.
Yeah.
Because kids in balance don't whinge. So, look, I would just say if you're really stuck there and you're in that breastfeeding cycle is, you know, it's totally fine. If it's not a problem for you, it's not a problem.
Absolutely.
Something is only a problem when it stops. And when you're really honest with yourself, that you can let go of your ego and your beliefs that you've attached to the particular way that you parent, particularly if you're in a family or circle where the way that you parent is not valued.
Yeah.
You might be wanting to cling even tighter onto the way that you do things. And I certainly know that was me back with number 2.
Yeah.
And I would just say, honestly, nobody cares. I know we want to make it that this whole world judges us, But honestly, nobody cares. Everyone's far too busy with their own stuff.
Absolutely.
It's like us, but they're really not. And so what I would really ask you to do is just to really deeply check in with yourself. And if what you're doing right now isn't working for you, the first person to get really honest with is you. Because it doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't mean you've chosen the wrong path of parenting. It doesn't mean you've got it wrong. It just means right now you're looking for change. And change is just another opportunity to expand your toolkit of your already, I'm sure, immense parenting toolkit. It's just another evolution of self. It's another way to bust beliefs and create more connection. But everything is us.
Yeah.
So, you know, I remember being that, you know, that was certainly me until I went, I just can't do this. And I was willing to take the pain of being up longer for a couple of nights in order to sleep longer in another couple of nights. And the way that I did it with a, you know, fully breastfeeding, co-sleeping baby through the night was I did start moving her into her own room and own bed. I had a floor bed then too. Just one sleep at a time. So, you know, I started with putting her to sleep in that bed, and when she woke up, she came back into bed with
That's
me.
what I did with Hugo too, actually.
Is it?
Yeah, that's exactly the same thing. Yeah, just and that was a really nice way to ease into it.
Yeah.
And a really gentle way to transition.
Yeah,
for
and once
both
we
of
got
us,
that,
I think. Yeah.
Then it would be, okay, well, now I'm going to settle for the next wake up. And, or it would be, you know, maybe they were comfortable with that and I was comfortable with the through the night. Then it's okay. I know that you wake up at 11, 2 and 5. I'm picking the 2 o'clock feed kills me the most.
Yeah.
So when you wake up at 2, I'm not feeding you. And I would talk to them about that during the day. And can I tell you, my daughter, my second born, I remember talking to her and she was up like what felt like every hour and a half or something.
Wow.
And I remember talking to her, she was 1, and saying to her, you know, that 2 o'clock feed, I can't do it anymore. So tonight when you wake up, I am going to be there and I am going to cuddle you, but I'm not going to feed you. It's like I never woke up.
Wow.
She never woke up again.
But it's like, you know, that is your level of congruence, you know, and her almost like coming in step with that. That's profound.
Yeah, it is, isn't
Yeah.
it? And you think it's made up, or it's like this baby that goes to sleep in like a minute. You think it's magic, but it's not. It's congruent.
It's like when I remember with Hugo, and that was the whole thing where I'm like, come on, Sylvie. With Hugo, I did the process of night weaning like just like that.
Yeah.
So I remember for a couple of nights, it was sometimes like having him in my arms screaming for like 45 minutes.
Yeah, I remember that too. But it would peter off each night. So
yeah, it was very quick. It was probably 2 or 3 nights.
I was going to say, I don't think I ever did one feed, you know, transition more than 3 nights.
Yeah, I think I went down from, I think by that time, because I remember doing with Hugo, who was about 14 or 15 months, and I'm pretty sure he was having 2 feeds during the night, maybe at that point. And so it was, probably 40 minutes feed by feed to drop.
Yeah.
And then once we dropped them, he never woke up again.
Yes.
You know, and slept through and still has not like woken up since he was 15 months and he's now only 5. And so it's amazing when you get congruent enough with yourself and firm enough in what your boundaries are too. I think on some level, I think they're almost waiting for us to be willing enough to say, this is what I
I think
right
that's
now.
what they do in parenting in general, don't you think? They push us to our edges.
Yeah.
Until we stand up for ourselves. This is a conversation, again, you and I were having today. It's almost like the bully victim syndrome. When we're overpowered in an area of life, that person is there to call us into our empowerment of that particular area.
When we're disempowered. Yeah.
Sorry, disempowered. Yeah. So when we're feeling like we have no power and this child is running it, and they almost keep going to push us to that edge, you know, just where you get to that point where you're about to break. And then it's almost like we get to a point in our psyche where we're like, okay, now I'll stand up. My pain is big enough. I'll stand up for myself. And we put in place the change that we actually needed to make a while ago, but weren't ready to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or just, weren't confident enough or for whatever reason couldn't do it.
Yeah.
They're always asking us to go into those places.
Yeah, in parenting in general.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just find the whole fascination of baby sleep, particularly looking at my 4th, I can think back to myself as evolutionary in my parenting, and I can see myself in each one of the ways my children slept. with my first, I can see that I was really anxious and really unsure of who I was, and I looked to everybody else to tell me what I should be doing. And it took, you know, doing it a way that felt like it broke my soul by witnessing what I thought was damage in him for me to really empower myself in an area of life that had never been empowered before. But he was a highly anxious sleeper. He was difficult, you know, until eventually he got to sleep, you know, certainly by 1. And then he was okay. With my second, I can see that I was totally like, no way am I doing that again. I am like all nourishing mother. I will hold everything, be with you for every step. It's not safe for you to sleep on your own. You don't need other sleep, you know, cues. You don't need control patterns, because I will meet every need. I will be your everything. And I will honour you in such a way that my mother never did. You know, I'll do that. I'll step up for you in a way that I was never stepped up for. And, you know, I mean, I did. I wore her for every single sleep. She, you know, I co-slept with her, breastfed for everything. And, you know, it did take me to the other extreme of attachment parenting, which is where you and I kind of came from, was really starting to recognise when attachment parenting stops working for you and you start to lose your sense of self and your sense of sovereignty and therefore the sense of place and power that you feel you have in your family and within the world. You know?
And your own sense of kind of aliveness, I can really see how that can almost lead you down being a shell of your former self, because all you are is simply of service.
Yes, yes.
But not from a really fulfilled, willing, abundant place.
Yeah. So she really needed me for sleep. And so she needed me for sleep. I really needed her to need me for sleep.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then with my third, well, we all know my third came with a gajillion lessons, but I thought I would parent in a fairly similar fashion, but I thought I would do more aware parenting overnight as opposed to just offering the breast. She didn't want to sleep with me at all. She wanted to sleep in a cot. She literally wouldn't settle with me. So she was my first experience of having a child sleeping, and she slept in a cot in our room. You know, now I have a baby sleeping in a cot in another room, which it just feels like they've just walked further away. And, you know, her sleep was, I used to hold her in my arms to cry. She did lots of releasing. And I really took it on myself as that was my responsibility to be there with her for that. And I felt really comfortable with that. But at night, you know, she was a shocker. She was waking up probably between 5 months and nearly 10 months. She was waking up every 45 minutes at night.
That's exhausting.
I was shattered, like completely. I can still remember it. And then all of a sudden, I don't even know what happened, but I got to that point where I was like, I literally can't do this anymore. Like, I literally can't do this anymore. And within the space of a week, she was sleeping through. So something psychologically happened for me in that time, because physically, I don't really think I did anything different.
Wow.
But it's hard to say, you know, if I was back there and I journaled it, maybe I would say something different. But mentally, I got to the point of, well, maybe it was just that whole attachment thing. She pushed me so far into attachment that I went, I can't do it. And I pushed back a bit. And found myself, you know, within that. So then with my fourth, I realised that in actual fact, I had far deeper, more quality sleep when I slept on my own without a baby next to me. And that was a hard realisation for me, actually, to own that. So going into baby number 4, as you know, I was terrified about sleep and how I was going to cope, and all I could think about was those 45-minute night time wake-ups, and I did not know what I was going to do. And spending my days rocking a baby or patting, or, you know, just I was like, I don't even know that I've got the space for that. But I did know I was going to be out and about a lot. I also has never been the person who could just be at home for sleep, so I've never been able to do that well, not consistently every day.
Neither.
I needed a baby who could be flexible, because if I'm out and about, my mental space is good.
Totally.
And I never wanted to be the person that was having a great time out at the party or the birthday.
But then I have to go home to sleep.
Have to go now.
Yeah.
I was like, no, not doing that.
Yeah.
No way, because that would just crush me in so many other ways, and I would find it really difficult with dysfunctional relationships.
And I think that's probably always why, like, going back to the Save Our Sleep book, it was never going to work for me because I can't be that rigid.
I can't either.
I can't be like, have to be home with this certain bed and the certain music at a certain time.
No. But you can make those things portable.
Yes.
Is what I want to tell you. And so what I saw around me was these mums at school who, you know, had the super porty babies. And I picked up different things. So, you know, a lot of them, they didn't worry so much about the little whimpers. They would talk to them rather than rushing to their rescue. I always rushed to the rescue. So it was really interesting for me just to sit, and I still do it, sit in my own tension when she's just kind of, you know, just to sit in myself in that, because that's my stuff.
Yeah.
And sleep cues, so the noise machine that can go anywhere with us. I know some mums have used apps on their phones, but I always wanted to be able to use my phone.
Yeah.
So I wanted a separate machine. And so from the word go, we used the machine. I like whacked her with about 10 sleep cues, thinking surely one of these is going to stick. So we're down to 3. You know, we're down to the sleeping bag, the noise, and she just wants something on her face. So she just, it doesn't matter if it's, I didn't want to attach to one thing either, because heaven forbid that one thing gets lost, right? So it can be, you know, a blanket, a jumper, a top, a toy. It can literally be anything, as long as she can, you know, hang on to it and kind of, she does this sucky thing near her cheek. So she has the toy. They're the 3 things. Did I say 3? Yeah, sleeping bag, noise, thing on her cheek. And with those 3 things, she will literally sleep anywhere. And that is amazing to me, because I don't need to get panicky. They're really ingrained sleep cues for her, so her body and melatonin automatically starts to become a very conscious click in with those cues. And again, they're independent of me. They're not me as a sleep cue, so they're transferable to anybody looking after her.
And that's so, like, empowering for you to have the
so empowering for them
and them too, exactly.
Because if you can get a baby to sleep, it's almost like you go, day's going to be okay.
Yeah.
So I can see how me really starting to look to the women around me for the wisdom that they had, that in my arrogance I assumed they didn't, really is what that was, has opened up the doorway to a baby that, you know, sleeps really well. Look, I mean, we're still up twice a night. She's nearly 6 months old. But I'm kind of okay with that. We're kind of up for 15 minutes twice a night. I feed her and she goes back to sleep.
Yeah.
You know,
and I'd say that's pretty.
I think that's
pretty
normal.
It's pretty age appropriate, I would have thought.
I think so. The pain of it's not big enough to make me want to change it at the moment.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit like, that's fine. You know, yeah, I'd rather sleep through, but also not ready for the bigger fight of more sleeplessness to get to the other side of it. I'm not ready.
Yeah.
So, and I know that. So while I'm not ready, I'd rather just sit here and look in the distance going, I know you're coming.
You're coming, yeah.
Yeah.
Those nights are coming.
And I know they will. I know they will. But my point is more not so much this is how to raise a baby, but more this is just things to consider that I can really totally see my evolution of self has completely been mirrored in each of my children's abilities to sleep. And I think that's pretty amazing.
It's incredible, isn't it? And it just shows how they're such little people waiting for us to get in step with ourselves, and that they'll just follow through. It's so much about that dance constantly, all the time, in every area with them. So we hope with our ramblings, and hopefully you've picked out a little bit of wisdom for yourself. I hope story. I think story sometimes just letting you know that, you know, you're not alone.
You're not alone. There is another side. You'll get there. You'll find your path is what we're hoping. Yeah. But the spin that we really want to bring from Nourishing the Mother is that, you know, you can do everything you want to do to your child, but until you sort out your own triggers, it's a fairly, you know, limited outcome. Yeah. Because it'll just morph.
Absolutely.
So please jump onto nourishingthemother.com.au and have a look at our programs if you're looking at upskilling a bit, or jump on and follow us on socials on Nourishing the Mother on Facebook and Instagram, where we regularly post. And just having things fresh of mind, I think, really allows you the capacity to integrate a lot of new toolkits into your life, just having an almost daily reminder about it.
Absolutely. And to connect with you, Jules,
is thepleasurenutritionist.com.
And me, it's suburbansandcastles.com.
And your next movie?
It's called Intuition is Your Personal Guidance System. It's a film that we're showing in Melbourne and Geelong, all around intuition, essentially. It's a fascinating one. So join us if you can.
Great. What's that tagline?
It is Nourish the Mother to Rock the Family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.